This conference will now be recorded.
I'll get closer to the mic here.
All right, there you go. Perfect.
Okay.
I'm going to email Gretchen and TJ Villamil real quick. I know they accept it.
So then following up on that, John, my question for you would be, do you, the college or anybody, in the county or anything, have any type of strategic plan or outline of projects that you're looking to fund in the future?
We do. Well, we have a strategic plan, that guides all of our projects, but we do have a list of sort of large scale projects that we're working on or plan on working on in the next few years. Yeah.
Great. If you have that, can you send that to me?
I'll have to pull something together. I'll get it over to you though.
Perfect. So, right, it seems to me that the easiest way to essentially, get the CEDS done and get the series of projects is pull from everybody's plans. Find out exactly what you're already looking to fund, and we have it taken care of.
Mark, I emailed both of them, Mark, so I don't know if we want to wait for them. We can just continue and see what we can accomplish. Maybe for your CEDS section, if you need anything from Dr. Moran or whatnot.
Can I just check real quick too? What's the level of detail? I think you want. Some of these things are in the very early planning stages. Some of them are more detailed. Do we need to have an amount in there or general overview?
Anything that you have is great. So, high level is definitely fine. If you have dollar amounts, that's even better. Essentially at the end of our CEDS process, we're going to have those projects identified. We'll have potential funding sources, and that will include amounts. So, eventually when we have our projects outlined, they will probably have estimated amounts. So that level of detail will be perfect to start with.
Okay.
Hi, Isabel. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, John. Hi, Carolina.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon.
Wow, we got our whole football team here. We can the RPC is well represented. Maybe I'll let you guys go on along. Ike, what's new?
Go ahead, Mark.
Sure. Well, for me, the big news is that in our last meeting, Dr. Moran sent over to us their resilient projects plan, and they already have a list of everything that they're looking to fund in the next few years. So, and then John and the college have a similar, outlined strategic plan. So what we're looking to do is, pull together everybody's, future planning and project funding sources, and then tie that together so that we have our outline of the projects and the CEDS ready to go. And Raldo, what were you saying?
No, I mean, for our last, attempt to have the meeting on Monday, I don't, we can move forward with whatever you want them to help for CEDS instead of doing the CARES Act, since we already asked the questions and we didn't get much input. I emailed Gretchen and TJ Villamil, sorry, I'm calling him TJ. Villamil, yeah. If they're joining, since they both accepted the invitation and they have not responded to me yet, so I'm not sure what's going on, but maybe, you know, Mark, maybe let me show the slide that I put together as far as for the CARES, for, you know, for the CARES Act, the issues that were mentioned by the other two groups too much. And maybe, I don't know, John and Dr. Moran might have some input at this point. I don't know. Might as well just show it,
No.
right? We're here.
No, we're okay. You know, it's fine. The bigger purpose of the meeting was essentially to give the update and then discuss, you know, the CARES Act and try to discuss our goals and objectives. I know we started having that discussion, you know, and we can just further that discussion today, and that's fine. But so where we're at today is that, you know, we got about a 50 to 60% response rate for the survey. You know, we've followed up with everybody a few times, trying to get them to respond to that, join a work group, and get their feedback. And, you know, but so this is where we're at. And so we're happy that, you know, it seems like you are ready to take the lead as far as, you know, driving economic development in your specific focus areas. Dr. Moran, yours would be the, you know, environment and resilient infrastructure, and John, economic diversification. And so at the next meeting, we can give an update on, you know, everything that we've discussed from each work group, and, you know, basically, you know, start having that outline of our SWOT analysis. And I will present that summary to everybody. Once we have the rest of the full committee together, we will assign everybody else and have everybody join a work group at that time, and they won't need to respond to a survey or anything. So that way, we'll ensure that we'll have more participation. We'll also be reaching out to other organizations, you know, the other education institutions, the other resiliency organizations at the county, infrastructure developers, and things like that, to get their feedback as well in the next work group meeting. So, you know, this is basically, we're trying to have you be part of the steering committee, and, you know, have us, you know, start with our focus areas and then flesh them out, you know, so it's okay that we have, you know, less is more at this point. And so this is essentially, you know, we were using this as the update. We've belabored the point. These are the focus areas. You know, as far as our two topics today, you know, we have in the middle left, or sorry, on the far left, economic diversification, all the industries that, you know, especially life sciences and the higher technology industries, of course, and environment, resilient infrastructure. We all know, you know, the biggest issues are water, water, water. So this is where, you know, everybody introduce themselves. We're all very familiar with each other at this point. So I'll just let you go ahead and, you know, give that context again as far as economic resiliency. Araldo.
I'll make it quick. I know John is really familiar with this, and I apologize, John, for repeating. I know you've attended both webinars where I spoke and I introduced this program, but Dr. Moran, just to give you a gist of it, the EDA awarded our council in 2020 a grant, CARES Act grant, which the main point for it is to create an economic resiliency and recovery plan for our region. And just in case there is another pandemic, like what would our region needs to have in place in order to be prepared and not caught off guard like we were just now. So this is just information that I had put together explaining what economic resilience is according to the EDA. And then Mark, you want to give me access? If you want to move the.
Sure, I changed it, but you can go ahead and share your screen, or I follow. Where do you want me to go? Do you want me to keep going?
No, it's okay. I'll share my screen. No worries. Here.
Sure.
All right. All right, perfect. So, like I said, just to prevent, prepare, recover, and respond due to the pandemic. Just the grand roadmap, real quick, what we've done. Hello? Okay. Just quarterly, what we've done, we've assessed, we've gathered data, we've submitted a survey and asking the region what were the main top 3 issues that they encountered for small businesses. And now there's the survey responses in a later slide in here. What we're planning on doing on March 2022, we would like to have a draft report, at least with goals and objectives and performance measures as to what we need to submit to include into this economic resiliency and recovery plan. And we're hoping that you would help us, identify these goals and strategies and how to achieve these goals. Some activities that the EDA is required for us is to align everything with the CEDS process that Mark handles. And they include the goals of economic diversification, business attraction, workforce development, TOD, now will be called mobility and access, and environment and resilient infrastructure. And then we identified, like I mentioned, the areas that we needed for research, submitted a survey, and the top 3 issues there were some that came out of it were loss of income, revenue, business, lack of financial support, be that no available governmental assistance funding, grants, not knowing how to navigate the PPP loans at the time, excuse me, and or losing out to the big corporations. And lastly, the lack of communication or miscommunication from local, state, and federal government, which has been a recurring theme even from some of our webinars and other, the SWOT analysis that Mark had put together, some of the answers that we received, which is leadership from the government. And this is just a graph. And another one was also staffing, but we were just related to issues from folks complaining that they couldn't find staffing. Staff was reluctant to go back to work and whatnot. And this, mind you, this survey was done from December to January of 2020. So it's pretty understandable. Even now there's the lack of staffing or employees, but at the time this was related to people being afraid to go into work. Mark, you want to go through this, or we don't have to, but
No, I don't have to belabor the data at this point. It's starting to, get a little bit dated, honestly, and it's everything that we, know. But I'll explain that, part of the CARES Act program and process was collecting data. Survey was one. Another was using our economic impact modeling software to forecast what we would expect to happen by the end of the year in 2021. And essentially, what the study was showing was in 2020 was on the left, travel and tourism was severely hit. But in 2021, as things started opening up and businesses were resilient and adapting, they would find ways to manage by doing things like expanding their outdoor offerings.
right.
Of course, these are the most hit industries. This was a bunch of data that explained that people were not traveling anywhere except for their home. So it wasn't just in spending or economic data, but truly there was a significant impact in travel. The forecast was that there would be significant, of course, impacts to employment across the board. But interestingly, in the study, personal income was continuing to increase, even though many people were losing their jobs. So it was who was economically impacted. And then the forecast by 2021 that Miami-Dade, with their most diverse workforce, would see the largest recovery. But then, you're still sharing your screen. You can go to the next one.
Right. Okay.
Sorry about that.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, I just wanted to skip because it's way too much information at this point, and we just want to get to the
Right.
what
We all know the story, and exactly. So at this point, what we want to do is have Aralda, take the floor, and we really want to start discussing some goals and objectives. What's going to happen for Aralda's CARES Act program is there's going to be an element in the CEDS that will be like a mini CEDS for economic resiliency. So, what's the biggest thing that we could have done in the context of the pandemic that would have kept us strong?
Exactly. So why we have all these work groups and how you can help us is your role pretty much is to assess the data, recommend strategies that will assist all the governments and communities in meeting short-term and long-term economic recovery efforts, identify performance measures for these long-term objectives and goals, and then develop, obviously, the regional economic resilience plan for South Florida. So I want to stop here because this is what we want to focus on. So other work group recommendations, as far as like pressing issues for our region to include in the economic resiliency plan, have been obviously affordable housing. There's lack of affordable housing, along with skyrocketing real estate market. This made it hard for residents to pay their mortgage or their rents. Workforce limitations such as inadequate training or low wages and a high concentration on low-paying jobs, specifically in the retail and hospitality industries that were the most impacted from the pandemic specifically. Another one is also lack of small business retention plans. There were limited efforts to diversify the South Florida economy, which were hampered by the pandemic, and small businesses did not have a backup plan or lacked a safety net to keep them afloat. And then lastly is like I mentioned before, which was the lack of communication from the government leadership overall. This siloed governmental agencies that they're not communicating with each other, or they're not connected, and made the residents' support resources difficult to find and efficient and like hard to navigate. So Mark and I were discussing, and so these are some of the pressing issues, and what we need help with. We need some goals and strategies for each one of them on how to achieve these goals possible. And it doesn't have to be, a huge, like 10 goals or anything like that. I don't want to scare you or anything, but we would like your input. Your background and experience and expertise, and I understand, Dr. Moran, I know you're in resiliency and whatnot, but I'm sure you are familiar with everything like everybody else with what's going on, and maybe can offer some input or feedback as to what types of goals should we include for each pressing issue that we have, and what types of performance measures should be considered for future events. So that's with that. And any feedback or comments you would like to give us, we would really greatly appreciate it.
Sure. I have a question, just trying to make the bridge here. I'm really trying to see how can I contribute better to the discussions. And I was wondering if you could go back to that picture that shows the groups. And my question is, are those same kind of pressing issues presented to all the work groups, and then you're going to get input from the different, or is this the ones that are presented only for the economic diversity?
No, these were for all. These
For
were
all.
from all, as in there's 4 work groups. The first one was business retention and business diversification, and workforce development. The second one was transitory development. And then economic diversification and resiliency is you and John represent, or Gretchen. Hi, Gretchen. How are you? Sorry, I didn't see you. I had the cameras off. But you're participating. We merged these 2 work groups, economic diversification and resiliency, together.
Yeah, hi Gretchen. Aralda, real quick, I would like to say hi and welcome Gretchen, and This is my first time meeting you, so I'd just like to welcome you. My name is Mark. I'm the Economic Development Manager here. I'm at the South Florida Regional Planning Council, managing the overall CEDS process. And so I know that you joined a little bit late. So part of our process is, essentially at this work group meeting, this is when we wanted to have it be a smaller team. And so we wanted everybody to introduce themselves, your organization, your role in economic development in the region, and then, given your understanding of what we're doing with the CEDS, what you would like to do with that. This is essentially the opportunity to try to lock into writing and set in stone, any programs or projects that you're trying to fund or initiatives that you would like to see in the region. We can put that into our economic strategic plan to, help make those cases for EDA project funding. So, yeah, would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay. Well, hi to everyone. I'm sorry that I was late. Today is Give Miami Day, and so I'm highly distracted because I'm texting a lot, basically asking everyone I know for money. By the way, Catalyst Miami is accepting donations today. If any of you are feeling generous, there's a $25 minimum. Okay. So I'm the CEO of Catalyst Miami, and we're an economic justice organization. We do quite a lot in the broad field of economic development, although none of it is particularly traditional. I'd say the most traditional thing we do is some technical assistance for small businesses, but it's a very small piece of the work. We do a lot of direct action organizing in low wealth communities across Miami-Dade County. We organize around climate justice, affordable housing and land use, and increased access to healthcare. Those are the three main issues, all of which we kind of approach from an economic justice lens. There are other campaigns, of course, that we get involved with at both the local and state level. Right now we're ramping up for a campaign around the state earned income tax credit. We've done quite a lot around Florida Power and Light. We run a few coalitions, including the Miami Climate Alliance and Miamians for Clean Energy. So there's quite a lot of work in the organizing policy advocacy space. I would say most of it is really focused on Miami-Dade County, but as I mentioned, there are occasions where it's regional or statewide. We also do a lot around what I think of as like prefigurative economic development work. So really kind of small pilots about what a more equitable economy could look like. So our most recent pilot is called the North Miami Community Investment Cooperative, and we're in the process of raising funds and purchasing a shopping mall that will be owned and managed by about 300 families that live in North Miami. And so that's the one example of what we do. We also provide in everything a lot of direct service to help stabilize families financially, including tax preparation, financial coaching. We manage a handful of credit building and loan products, kind of operating in a sense like a community financial institution, but we're not one. We just work with them on the back end to offer products to our clients. So that's kind of a very messy introduction to Catalyst Miami. In terms of some of the things that could make their way into a plan, one of my favorite things that we do is manage Future Bound Miami, which is the Universal Children's Savings Program for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. And I think that those programs like that, Universal Children's Savings and baby bonds, have a lot of promise regionally. So it could be something that could be expanded, not by Catalyst, but by other governments that are interested in offering savings accounts to their youth. We do a lot of work around public land, like who owns it, the public owns it, but how it's kind of given away, who's getting it, what they're doing with it, are they following community priorities? So I think that there's probably something in there, like around land banking, creating community land trusts, things of that nature. We tend to think that land is like one of the keys to wealth building, community wealth building in South Florida. So we pursue a lot of strategies around land. We also incubate worker cooperatives, and we're getting ready to launch a new initiative where we organize and domestic workers to help them form more formal small businesses together. I think that the worker cooperative model also has a lot of promise because all of the workers are also owners in the business. So a lot of a lot of our projects kind of come from solidarity economics, which is a different kind of frame, like an opposing or adjacent frame to capitalism, in terms of who's making the money, who's benefiting, who's in control, that sort of thing. I hope some of this is landing. I know I've just said a whole lot.
What was the name of your last pilot program? Because I'm looking at my other computer on your website and I was trying to find it. It's not on the website, or?
The worker cooperative one?
Yes.
There should be a page on our Worker Cooperative Academy. The one with domestic workers hasn't been announced yet. We're going to announce it in January.
An academy. Okay. Sounded interesting.
No, definitely landing. That's a lot of work that you're doing in a lot of different areas that are honestly hitting a lot of best practices that I've been, encountering throughout. So that's excellent. And, these are things that we are going to basically, bring all of these, projects and priorities to the next meetings and focus on, the main priorities that are landing throughout all of the organizations in the next meeting. So excellent. Thank you so much for all of that.
Yeah, well, thanks for giving me the platform. I wasn't expecting it, but I need to take advantage.
Of course. And yes, and Isabel, yes.
Yes. Hi, Gretchen. Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey,
Hope
Isabel.
all is well. Hello. Can you back up just a little bit? When you said something about an economic model and mentioned capitalism, and it sounded like you were saying a different economic model. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
About solidarity economics?
Yes. What is that?
Well, it's kind of it's a tradition that actually goes back, I don't know, probably like hundreds of years in native communities, like indigenous to the Americas. But it's really kind of an economic practice that's more centered on kind of democratic management and local control, and kind of is opposed to like a more neoliberal capitalism frame where there's this idea that privatizing everything will generate riches that eventually make their way to everybody. This is more about like everybody that's working is also an owner and an investor, and one person, one vote. And all of the profits are shared equally too. I would say one thing that is true about this kind of economic framework is that profit is actually not the motive, the most important motive. A lot of it is more about control and agency for communities, for families. So it's a different paradigm.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's helpful. I don't know if I would agree with all that, but it's helpful to understand it, and it's something to learn more about. Yeah. So that's good. All righty.
Definitely. At least right as a piece in our economic diversification, having cooperative models and, there other pieces be at least a piece of the puzzle, are it's good to have multiple, formats.
Mhm.
So
Thank you.
So I know I'm going back to this one.
right. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. And Gretchen, I know looking at the website, I mean, I had looked at your website before as well, and what Catalyst Miami does, it's closely related to what we're actually trying to accomplish. I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything like that, but any feedback, any goals or strategies that you think might work for us to include in this, in the economic resiliency plan for South Florida, that would be greatly appreciated. So these were just I'm not sure if you listened to this part when you joined or not. Yeah, okay, it's too much text, I know,
The
sorry.
work group recommendations, the page you're on right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
yes,
on.
right. So we're looking for goals for each of these issues that were identified by the other work groups, as in, what is the goal? Obviously, the goal is no more have affordable housing. What are some strategies that we can do to have to have affordable housing for our region, or workforce limitations, workforce development? What are some goals that we can do? Should we create more training? And I know, obviously, like partners would be schools, workforce development groups or agencies, such as like the South Florida Career Center. And then the third one is, for instance, the lack of small business retention plans. Like, what can one goal be? The one that comes to mind for me is, support local businesses, right? Like, how would you do that? Like, buy local, the usual, that we've heard it before, but it's not always. It's always good to reinforce and repeat some of these measures or goals, really. And when it comes to like siloed governmental agencies, from the data that we got from the survey and the SWOT survey that Mark was mentioning, well, you didn't attend the last one, but leadership was one of the main threats, right, Mark? Was threats part of it? Yeah, kind of. Well, not threats as much as
No, no. Leadership, government cooperation in general is, very commonly mentioned. Essentially, there are a lot of small governments that have a lot of goals and that are doing their own thing, and then there are separate organizations that are regionally based or county based, and then there's the state, and everybody has different focuses, and they're all not playing together. And
right. They're not competing.
that's essentially, you have the issue, but then at the same time, everybody's also saying that we all know the issues, but we can't get together to actually do something about it. And the CEDS is the opportunity. And I know that our past chair and our CEDS chair, Senator Geller, is saying that the Regional Planning Council needs to do regional planning, and that's why we're using the CEDS to do regional planning. So that's why we're putting that in, and that's why we need to take our CEDS a step further than what it has been, which is just a set of these goals and talking about the problems over and over again. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 problems, like we all know, but we want to take these goals and we want your specific feedback. What has gone wrong, in the details. This is the opportunity for us to actually have like a working group meeting for you to say, like, the last time, how was there a government coordination problem? What happened? Things like that. And then what can we do about it? Or do we need to just put, we need to outline the organizations that are going to participate in regional planning through the CEDS, But this is the opportunity to discuss, goals and objectives. Take this to the plan level.
Mark, I think it's also an opportunity to say not only what hasn't worked, but what has worked. So we don't lose what has worked, right?
Of course, right. So, in the process, as well as our best practices. And so, right, what has worked, those are best practices. What hasn't worked, what we need to actually just work on. And, it's actually more important to mention those best practices, because continuing to talk about the problems isn't getting something done. We actually have to expose what worked.
I can mention a few things that are underway that address a couple of these points. For the supply of affordable housing, right now, Miami Homes for All is working with a coalition of organizations that includes Catalyst. We've been organized into the Greater Miami Housing Alliance, and we are working with a national intermediary called the Center for Community Investment to kind of apply what they call a capital absorption framework to the affordable housing crisis. And this is a framework that was developed a few years ago and is really about helping like local leaders kind of galvanize resources and stakeholders and to kind of illuminate pipelines for affordable housing and get capital moving in the right direction. So they're in the beginning stages of working on this with the Center for Community Investment, but I think that capital absorption framework could be really powerful if brought to other entities as well. For workforce, we don't do quite as much in that area, but I know that the Miami Foundation had a pretty significant grant from JP Morgan Chase to work on kind of understanding the workforce ecosystem and bringing together, like the different entities that provide workforce training and placement, et cetera, to find out like where there could be improvements, like where the ecosystem is weak. I don't know what the results of that are. They launched the Labor Miami website, but I would imagine that there are more findings. They were working with the Metropolitan Center at FIU to do some research. So they might be worth checking in with. For small business retention plans, I feel like, and you'll have to forgive me if this seems like a little scattered, but part of the issue is that we have like we're not a very strong CDFI community. I'm sure Isabel can speak to that because you all are a CDFI, aren't you? And it's hard to get dollars in and then deploy them. That's the sense I get from other partners that are CDFIs. But part of the issue is that there aren't very many that do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Isabel.
No, I was just going to say, we have been working um, doing CDFI stuff, but we've actually never been able to get fully certified. So that's been a real challenge, So I don't know. I know the Urban League in Broward County finally got certified, but
Oh, did they? That's great.
yeah, they did. Urban League
Are
Broward
they
County.
going to do small business lending? Do you know?
I think so. And we've been working with them. We've been doing a lot of affordable housing with them because we had funds from them in our CDFI.
Mm-hmm.
So we could talk more about that later. We could set up a meeting with our senior loan officer. I think you would enjoy that.
Yeah, I think so. I would say, kind of taking a step back from the small business retention plans, there needs to be like, so for all of the Germains and urban leagues, we need like 10 more for 20 more 20 more urban league CDFIs
Sure, absolutely.
to really like get money like into the grassroots. Like when we did our own kind of pandemic surveying of small businesses, one of the things that really blew our minds was that so many folks like hadn't heard about any of the government programs that were coming down the pike, like PPP and EIDL, et cetera.
Have the same
Like
responses. Yep.
that's what you found too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like there are resources. There may not be sufficient for everybody, but getting word out about them is really, really difficult. And even for a lot of the businesses that had heard about it, they weren't in a position to take advantage because their businesses weren't totally formal. Like there's a lot of kind of, I think of them as like mixed status businesses where like there's some practices that are, on the books formal and others that are not. Um, So there, there's just there's a lot of hustle in our communities, and it's hard to um, it's hard to both reach and provide support for people when when you don't know where to find them and they're not sure they want the help. Like it's a bit of a dance. So I think that the more when you have more intermediaries that are active, it helps. And then when you have the government coordination, and that's one thing that Mayor Daniela wants to do is really coordinate the CRAs in Miami-Dade County. And I think that would be great if they were talking to each other more and had some aligned strategies.
You're absolutely right. When we did our survey we opened our survey from December through January of 2020. One of the top three issues was loss of income, lack of financial support, and lack of communication slash miscommunication from the government. And the lack of financial support was exactly what you said, that small businesses didn't know how to navigate. They didn't even know about the resources, or didn't know how to navigate the PPP loans, didn't have the resources to apply for those PPP loans, or they were outbid by the big corporations who, I remember when the first CARES financial assistance programs, they opened up, I think they got the applications and it closed within 15 minutes? Or something crazy like that. That's how many applications they got. Within 15 minutes, they were full. The funds were already just submitted. So. But yeah, no, this is really helpful, by the way. Thank you so much. Whatever you just said for the CDFI and have the intermediaries, that makes sense with everything. Anybody else? John, for the keys, anything? Dr. Moran? Anything you want to add?
I am going to share with you. You probably already saw this report from the Compact. I know Isabel did. That's the business case for resilience. I believe Dr. Hurado presented many times. I think that report helps to make the link between the information that I share with you and what does that mean. I'm trying here hard to make the link, and especially looking at those four pressing issues. And I remember during the pandemic, we participated in a lot of events and a lot of seminars that were talking about the risk of having impacts from a pandemic lasting longer and really lacking the capacity to recover if we are in a condition where the climate impacts are going to be much more, I would say, present in South Florida. So the work that I do, it's more like looking in 40 years from now, 30 years from now. But what we discussed during the pandemic a lot was like, what if we have this scenario of a major impact to the economy at the same time where we are dealing with like probably long-term types of impacts that are also impacting the economy, which comes from the impacts of climate change. So the report that I share with you talks a little bit about the investments needed, the return on investments, things that we can do for the region to really start building resilience to avoid getting to a situation like that when we have compound impacts happening at the same time. And then, but the link that I want you to think when you look at that is they look at mostly tidal influence impacts, so sea level rise essentially, and also the implications of sea level rise impacts on property, I would say nearby, close to the coast, in a context of sea level rise and inundation from the sea. The report that I share with you, Mark and Eralda, includes also flooding risks and impacts that are distributed basin-wide. So it's looking at also flooding driven by rainfall, increasing rainfall, and compounding impacts also, of course, from a storm surge, king tide perspective, which was included in the business case for resilience. So I think that's how you can approach a little bit. I'm trying to bring those questions. and the importance of also investing in protections, in building resilience against those future climate impacts so that we don't get to a situation where we have all those compound economic impacts to the society.
Thank you, Carolina. I just sent them the link to the document.
What's that, Isabel?
Did I just send you guys the document, the business case for resilience?
Right, Dr.
Right.
Moran, she sent it to us, so.
Right. And, you know, in the case of economic resiliency, you know, this time the economic shock was the pandemic, but typically our biggest threat in the region are things like Hurricane Andrew, things that have made the last economic disaster. You know, so that's exactly why the business case of that study needs to be brought in. That's exactly the focus for resiliency and infrastructure investment in the context of economic development.
Yeah, how can we somehow build some resilience that we don't get to where this is acceptable?
Right.
Yeah. So, and one more important consideration. The elements on the plan that you have are focusing a little bit on inland that needs to be integrated to the coastal aspects that I was just describing as part of this business case for resilience. And there is also an extra layer, which is providing protection from those huge hurricane events, which really goes beyond what we have in that document. So we are not really addressing all the impacts from major hurricanes with that list of investments yet. And there's much more to address. And I would say the Miami Bay study.
Can't understand you now.
There is some background noise. I don't know where it's coming from. But what I was saying is maybe if you look at the Back Bay study in Miami, those are some of the pieces that we also need to be able to aggregate as part of investments needed to also provide protection against storm surge. The Back Bay Miami is not the best example. What I'm suggesting is only that those are the types of investments that we have to start beginning to take into account. And I know it's not really the ideal types of investments yet, but we need to evolve to a point where we find those protections. So it's a lot of pieces that we need to be able to address here.
Great point.
Great point.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with the CARES program at this point, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, John, unless you have any, anything
Yeah,
that you want to further from the last time that we were discussing, and if there's any specific things that I know that thinking about pandemic / economic shocks, especially in our region and especially in your county, one of the biggest things at least was we were severely impacted because the thing that was mainly impacted was leisure and hospitality, and that's what we were reliant on. And economic diversification is key, and so I see it as a two-pronged approach would have kept us, more resilient to that economic shock. One is, where you come in, which is the workforce development and training perspective, and getting workers ready for the other prong, which is, we need to bring in new businesses that, are working for the needs of the region, adapting to the environmental challenges that we have, and taking on those higher skilled workers that you are training. And so, just anything that you saw or any specifics that you want to mention, or if not, I mean, the only other thing that we have was, just, a full in-depth, analysis of some of the responses that you gave.
Yeah, no, I mean, on our side, a lot of this issue, and of course the workforce is where our primary focus is on. I'll get you guys some more detailed information, but one of the things that's really exciting that we have is we've taken over a property in Big Pine Key, which is about 30 minutes north of Key West, maybe about 15 minutes north of Marathon. And Marathon was a designated opportunity zone. It's as far as the Keys go, it's definitely one of the least served areas. So it's really close to that, but it's a former prison site that the college has taken over. And we're going to be using it for a lot of really interesting workforce development programs. We've got a pilot project with Mission Iconic Reefs, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, where we are helping to use some interesting methods to maintain and improve the health of the reef. So ideally in that space, we'll be able to grow that project out once the project, because it's going to require a lot of space. We're growing crabs that harvest off the reefs and doing all sorts of interesting stuff. So we've got some really cool, advanced types of work going on. And then we're also going to be using this area for CLD training and things like that, which currently isn't even in the Keys. So if anyone wants to get a CLD license, they have to drive up to Miami-Dade and do the training there. So we've got some really quick, rapid programs that will be able to get off the ground quickly, and then some really forward-looking opportunities for workforce as well in that property. So I think that'll be a good site for us to maybe highlight.
Is there, do you have this on your website somewhere where we can find this information, or?
No, I'll get it over to you. It's really, we just took over the lease from the state really recently. I think they're just getting the final, everything cleared off the land right now, so that we're able to take it over and go in and start. So I'm sure nothing's probably on our website yet, really preliminary, but I have all the information, so we can get you some details on it.
Okay. Perfect.
Oh, and I'm glad you mentioned, that opportunity zones are also mentioned, in our CARES Act program. They were a top priority of EDA, as I'm sure you know, and now we're basically blending the opportunity zone focus into equity, which is, EDA's #1 priority and across the board, the biggest trend. And so any opportunities that you know of to drive investment into opportunity zones actually create jobs and create wealth in them instead of the typical use of them. Any best practices that you've heard of, we would definitely love to promote them and include them in the plan too, if you know.
Yes. Definitely. All right. Mark, do you want to go over the SWOT analysis real quick? Did you go over it last time?
I can glance over it just so that we can all.
Just since Gretchen did not attend that one, it's just.
But yeah, I made a series of word clouds, essentially taking your input from the survey, from everybody. These are economic diversification and the environmental work group responses. And the big thing that everybody says, diversity and weather is our strength, of course. Everybody says that. Go ahead. And then, of course, affordable housing and public transit are the weaknesses, largely at least. Araldi, you have a different presentation. I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, I think so.
Okay. And then so basically, the #1 strength is our weather and our location, and everybody loves being in Florida, but that's only if Florida stays the way it is and the water doesn't come in and continue threatening us, and all the natural disasters that we have. And so basically what I see as the opportunity in South Florida is, our biggest strength is our biggest weakness, is our biggest threat, is that's the opportunity, is that we need to focus our workforce development, economic diversification strengths on everything that we've already been doing in the region. And we really just need to stay coordinated. Everybody says the same thing. We need to get that leadership coordinated. We really just want to take this up next year to put some programs on paper and have our plan. That's really essentially it. And in our next meeting, what we're going to do is give you just another summary. We have our an annual report for our CEDS, just a basic data update, and then we'll go over all the SWOT analysis that everybody gave in the survey, just one large summary. We'll finalize that because essentially part of the EDA process for doing the CEDS is that gathering your feedback, summarizing it, having you then approve it, put it in a finalized document, which we'll publish. So in the next meeting, I'll have those few pages. So it'll be there for you to approve. And then we essentially want to set the framework for, in the next meetings, taking these projects, these priorities that you have, and finalizing it. And so that's really it. If you have any other questions.
I'm good, thank you.
Perfect. Well,
Perfect.
right
To the dot.
at 2:00.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Great.
for your time,
Thank you so
everyone.
much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Everyone, bye.
This
Thank you.
Hope everything's